Ruby Franke's ex-friend, Paige Hanah, has been doing a tell-all video series about her experience with Ruby Franke, as well as Jody Hildebrand. She has just released the third video in this series where she gets into details about when Jody Hildebrand was living at her home for 6 weeks. Kevin Franke actually talked about this in one of his police interviews. This is what he had to say.
According to Jody, she was held against her will for 6 weeks and was kidnapped, and she escaped and got out. According to the Hanahs, after 6 weeks of Jody stabbing herself with forks and knives, cutting herself, and wanting to commit suicide and trying to seduce the husband of the family, they kicked her out. I don't know what's the truth. Maybe a little bit of both, I don't know. But the point is, somewhere around mid-April, Jody was back in her home in Ivins, and she was a hot mess.
If you have not yet watched the first two videos, make sure to go back in my videos and watch those first. Paige does get into detail in the first two videos about how she met Ruby Franke, how she met Jody Hildebrand, and how she ended up kind of getting involved in the Connections Church in the first place. In the meantime, here's the video from Paige Hanah. Let me know your thoughts in the comments and make sure to hit follow, as I will definitely be updating on this case.
Hello, I'm here recording the third video where I talk about my experiences with Jody Hildebrand and Ruby Franke. This video is going to be a little bit different. It's taken me a long time to even work up the desire to record another video. I don't want to do this. Can we just lay that out? It is hard to think back on my experience with Jody. It is hard to reflect on my relationship and friendship with Ruby. It ended really abruptly. Oh. And so I have wanted to just set this aside. Many of you have emailed saying, you don't have to do this. I can see your pain. You don't have to feel obligated. And I don't feel an obligation or a duty. When I sit back and I think about what I've been through and everything I've learned, all I have is a desire to use all of the painful lessons I learned so that maybe you won't repeat them. And my experience is really unique in that Jody had taught me some amazing I don't like the word principles. So they were just good teachings. There were things that were sound and were good. And had I not learned them, I wouldn't have been able to see her clearly. And so it's a really interesting situation because she came into my home a very, very broken person. And had I not spent so many years trying to understand my own brokenness and really try to uproot my pain and heal it, I wouldn't have been able to see hers so clearly. And it's such a big part. So I have sought a lot of counsel in the things that I share. In the first video, I explained my involvement in Connections and relationship with Ruby. I also explained one of the things I learned most was that if you put anything above God, it has become your new God and you are at risk of being deceived. In my second video, I talked about introducing Ruby to Connections and our friendship and how I viewed generational healing as something really important. That's the avenue I took Connections. And I explained how a lot of these teachings were weaponized. In this video, I will explain how she came into my home And some of the tools that I had received that helped me see the level of her illness. This last month, as I've been struggling and as I've been contemplating, do I want to do this? Why would I keep talking about it? I've asked myself, what is my purpose? Why put myself through this discomfort? Why try to dredge up these experiences that were hell 3 years ago? And it's to answer the question, how could this happen? And that's it. How could this happen? And I think I have an understanding of how. So bear with me. You know I talk slow. It's very important to me that these are not scripted, that I allow the thoughts to flow, the words to flow the way they should. And if I'm headed down a path, a train of thought that I feel is not where I should be going, then I'm going to stop and shift. Because I want to be real, and I want to, I just want to be genuine in my experience, genuine in my desires, and that is to share my shortcomings and faults in hopes that you might learn from them. In 2021, we had just finished a coaches retreat when we were getting ready to put all of these coaches out into their own field, where they would take on their own clients and they would begin teaching the way they felt was best. The same principles, the same things that we had learned, but like I said, I really gravitated towards the generational healing. Other women gravitated towards the different things that really were receptive, what they were receptive to, that they helped them heal. It was that weekend that everybody was in my home, all these coaches, we had gone through a training. We were basically graduating. I laugh because there was just a lot of evidences of Jody's lack of business skills in that. And I think if any of you coaches are watching, former coaches, you will laugh in remembering some of those things. And yeah, we were getting ready to graduate, to move on. That same weekend, Jody had confided in me those dreams that she'd been having. We talked some more about them, and the severity and her distress with them. She went home. Everybody went home. She went home, and in the next few days, Johnny and I, my husband, received a phone call that Jody needed help. And this phone call came from a person that I had never met before. I don't believe I'd ever even spoken to her on the phone. And she was a dear friend of Jody's, living in a different country, thousands of miles away, who had known her for, 20 or 30 years. This friend had Jody on the line also, and expressed how concerned she was that Jody was not doing well. And my husband and I didn't understand what does that mean, not doing well. And she said she's suicidal. Now, Johnny and I had some experience previously with a very close relation who had been suicidal, so immediately this tugged on our heart, and because of the goodness of our hearts, we were in the state of, what can we do? How can we help? This friend said she's really worried because Jody lives alone and doesn't have a lot of close relations down where she lived. And the majority of the help she could seek and friends were up near where I lived. So my husband and I offered to go, well, we offered for her to come and stay with us. And she said no. Jody said no. No, I can't put you out. No. I can't remember if in the last video I had said that she makes something your idea. If I didn't say it, I thought it, but that's because that's how she functioned. And so she said, no, I couldn't do that to you. And because of what we thought was the severity of the problem, we offered to meet her halfway. We said, okay, that's fine. We're just going to drive halfway. And if you're there, great. If you're not there, then you'll have made us drive the whole way for nothing. And then we won't be able to help you. So we drove halfway, met up with her, and ended up driving back to our home where she would stay. First of all, I was apprehensive. Jody's a hard person to be around. I don't know if you've gathered that by now, but she is a lot to handle, and I already knew that. I'm friends with her. I loved her for her great qualities, and was grateful for the small doses. So there was a lot of apprehension in the thought of her coming. I set that aside, thinking that this was a very loving, compassionate thing to do, compassionate, loving way to help. If you had said, go get this woman, she's going to be living with you for 6 weeks, I wouldn't have. That just wasn't even in my mindset. Also, the nature of my home allows for a lot of space between people. So I also at the time had a nanny helping many hours throughout the day. So I thought that there could be a lot of separation between helping Jody and my kids being protected and helped. So it was late at night. We brought her to our home. And the next day, this friend from out of country said that she would be coming also. She would be flying in to help her dear friend Jody. There were also other friends of Jody's aware of this situation, and friends of my own aware of this situation. So I felt like I had a lot of support around me, and she was not able to alienate me and my husband the way she was with the Frankes, which, how could this happen? If I'm answering that question, that's one of the key things. We had a support system around us that was very dear to us, and maybe over time, maybe over months, she would have been able to weave her way and break those relationships, but she wasn't while she was here. I didn't think that I could actually help her. It's not like we brought her here because I thought that my husband and I were capable of taking on somebody suicidal and solving their problems for them. I thought we were a step in a much bigger process. I learned very quickly that she was unwilling to seek professional help. Her reasons for not seeking professional help were that they're just in distortion, that they don't understand, that they'll just medicate her and then she'll be a zombie and that'll take away her agency. So you can see how she already had her own like honest, responsible, humble narrative that she had to cling to, and that we understood. So when she said they won't allow me to live honestly because I'll be drugged, or they're not honest, or I mean, she convoluted all of it to where I was like, then what do we do? Then how do we help? I had sought help previously in an unconventional way from somebody who does, I don't know, I'd say energy work, but it's a mix of so many different modes of healing, and it had been very beneficial to me. Yes, I'll explain why I'm laughing later. This woman had helped me understand that a lot of the answers to my problems I can find through my subconscious. And if I am asking my higher power for assistance, my subconscious can provide the means to heal to the answers. So we decided to go down that route. That's the one Jody was open with. I recognize now she was open because she thought it was a system she could manipulate. At the time, I had full hope that she would be able to understand what she was going through and why. This is where some of her teachings came into play for me. One of the ones that she had explained she didn't explain most. Truth and distortion is what she hit on most. One of the things that she taught briefly that I really clung to was the concept of denial. And I'm going to reiterate a little bit of what I explained in the first video. You're in a state of peace or you're in a state of pain. And that, in order to understand where that shift was, that you went from peace to pain, you have to look at your thoughts, and you have to look at your actions, your behaviors, and then you might be able to see where the shift was, and then get yourself back into peace. If you were unwilling to look at your pain, then you would utilize denial. And there's all these tactics of denial. There's all these tactics of avoidance to look at your pain. And when I understood those, and I saw this long list of avoidance tactics, I could see myself using so many of them. I actually have a list, and I'm going to pull it up because this is key to understanding how I saw Jody clearly. Avoiding in itself is a tactic to not look at your pain. Blaming somebody else, compartmentalizing, comparing, creating distractions, entitlement, exaggeration, either or thinking, which is black and white thinking, which many people within connections were very good at black and white thinking. Feeling helpless or hopeless, intellectualizing, justifying your behavior, minimizing your behavior, storytelling, manipulating, omitting information, rationalizing, thinking you're unique or different, and thinking you're a victim. So at first, it's really easy to think of all these forms of denial and to think, oh, other people are utilizing them. And so I was guilty of that. I thought, oh, I can tell when my husband's in pain because he's rationalizing or he's intellectualizing, or I can tell if my kids are in pain because they're trying to manipulate or they're omitting information. And so while it could have been a weapon, I just saw it as information. Oh, I can understand people better if I know these things. And then it evolved into, I can understand myself once I recognize I minimize my emotions regularly. I over-intellectualize. I justify things. I feel entitled. So I started reflecting on my own behavior. And as I did that, I ultimately saw that I was in a great amount of pain, suppressed pain. And so then I started asking myself, what am I not looking at? Why do I have limited memories from certain years of my life? Why is this resonating so deeply with me? This concept of denial, being in denial. So I spent a lot of time studying it. And so much to where in the past, I would have had that entire list memorized. And throughout the day, I would have been able to watch myself move in and out of those different places of denial. That training was so integral to my experience with Jody and her decline mentally. So she was here because she was suicidal. So I thought. And because that's what I thought I can help her. And I can help her through introducing her to this healer who can help her look at what's really going on behind these sleepless nights, these dreams. And as we worked, and I say we because I was a part of some of those sessions at her request, Jody's request, I started seeing the amount of pain that Jody had been bearing. She had already confided certain things in me. And so when she was discussing with this healer, I could hear she was omitting information. I could hear that she was telling a story one way when I recall it happening a different way. So I could see she was manipulating the situation. If you were a suicidal person seeking counsel from Jody, I could only imagine that she would tell you, like, the counsel she would give you in different ways. And this was back then. And I could hear that she was not living what it was she would tell others to do. So she was the exception to the rules, the exception to her teaching. When somebody is living as the exception to the world, the exception to how things are taught and done, or the exception to let me put this into words. When somebody lives as the exception to their own teachings, or to the laws of the land, or to the laws of God, it's the evidence of the highest amount of pain. When I witnessed her doing that, I started understanding the depths of what pain she must have come through. It was an assumption of what she had come through. I need to rephrase that. It's what I was hearing her experiences had been. So many of those dreams were not dreams. So many of the emotions were real. And as I sat in some of those sessions, I was awoken to what real pain and suffering is. That I had actually been in very much a bubble too in my life. And because of this pain that I was beginning to understand, I felt immense compassion and an even stronger desire to help. But help how? Because we witnessed self-harm, self-mutilation, starving, binging, it was made known to me that previously in Jody's life, she had been diagnosed with schizophrenia, or what's the term? I know there's another one, dissociative identity disorder. And was something that she thought she had managed, and yet it all opened up and resulted in that those suicidal thoughts and behaviors. So while she was here, and as I was understanding some of the things that she had been through, that she had tried so hard to suppress, my world shattered because of the bubble that I had been living in. I had already started recognizing that the teachings that I was getting through connections were a Band-Aid. And that a lot of therapy is a Band-Aid. But unless you can go in and really understand how you've come to be the person you are, how you've come to the understandings and the views of the world that you have, then you truly can't find healing. And so I watched very closely Jody and her behaviors and her tics and her denial. And felt completely helpless. There was a great support system here. She had very close friends who were with her and were understanding these same things. Who knew of her past, who knew and had done a good job of hiding, allowing her to live in this state of denial. And I had approached Jody and said, you need a support system. We need to tell others about this. And there were some couples that were very close to us that I said, we need to call them and we need to explain to them what's happening. And every time I had suggested a greater intervention of telling more people, I was met with, no, because then the voices in my head will get worse, and then I will this, which would end in suicide. She had even asked when she came into my home if I would take her car keys, because if she had access to them, then in the middle of the night, she would drive away and cause an accident on the highway. I see how, because of me following and believing those things, she could then go to the Frankes after me and say, she was kidnapped. I told you, she would tell 90% truth with a 10% lie. She would say something to the effect of, she took my car keys, she wouldn't let me go anywhere, she would lock the doors, and all of that is true. But I did it because she told me to. And she told me if I didn't, she would kill herself. So much manipulation. Okay. I think I need to leave it here because I'm upset. It's really hard to go back, like I said, and visit that 6 weeks. The first week I was very much sucked in to this idea that her suffering was something that I could aid in mending. The second week, is when she had started going into actual memories. And when I learned the suffering that exists, sorry, the real suffering that exists in the world. The third week I was exhausted and started recognizing more severe behavior. And that's only halfway through. So I'm gonna leave it here. And I hope what I said made sense. Because remember, I'm answering the question, how could this happen? And it's not just how could this happen to the Franke children, but how could Jody get to this place? So, okay. Thanks for your time.